All right, good afternoon and welcome to this July 19th meeting of the Tallahassee City Commission. I would like to invite those who are willing and able to please stand for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Almighty God, we thank you for your goodness and your many blessings. We ask that you continue to guide us to make decisions that impact our community in a positive manner. As always, we seek your divine wisdom for the work ahead and give you all the praise for your ever watchful care. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Mr. City Manager, are there any agenda modifications?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. We have one addition, item 11.05, and two deletions, item 5.02 and item 9.04.
Awesome. Commissioner Maddox, will you join me at the podium? All right, I want to invite Stephanie Perkins and Ms. Heather Gainey, and actually any folks who are with you, along with your furry friends, to join us here at the podium, and I'm going to invite Commissioner Scott Maddox to present a proclamation. Sir.
It is my great pleasure to give this proclamation, and before I actually read the proclamation, I want to just read a few facts. Animal therapy has been around since 2005. With over 150 animal handler teams, they not only provide animal therapy throughout the hospital, but they reach nearly 50 outside organizations through the community each year. They've provided around 35,000 nose-to-nose introductions to date. I especially want to mention my friend Chuck Mitchell and Ricky. Love for y'all to come up. The parents of Ricky are here, and Ricky was a particularly influential animal. She has been previously honored, but she was a pioneer in the animal therapy field, expanding animal therapy's reach to include the court system. Although she has recently passed away, Ricky is being remembered by TMH through their creation of a super pup mascot that will serve to comfort children for many years to come. Her legacy will live on. So it is my great pleasure to provide this proclamation. Whereas Tallahassee Memorial Animal Therapy is a worldwide leader in fostering the human-animal bond and therapeutic connections between people and animals, and whereas these bonds are scientifically proven to further assist healing and improvements in mental and physical health, and whereas with 150 highly trained and qualified animal therapy teams, animal therapy's diverse species ranging from therapy dogs and cats to birds, horses, and even a therapy goat. And whereas these animal therapy teams have been instrumental beyond hospital walls in the further development of children's reading ability through providing animal therapy teams as listeners in local schools and libraries, and whereas animal therapy has been instrumental in the passing of legislation to further provide support to victims of sexual offenses and has provided animal therapy teams to assist in hundreds of criminal and dependency cases. Whereas animal therapy continues to provide the Big Bend and beyond access to happiness, comfort, and healing through powerful and meaningful interactions with animal therapy teams. Now therefore I, Scott Maddox, along with Mayor Andrew Gillum and the entire City Commission, hereby proclaim July 2017 as Animal Therapy Month in the City of Tallahassee.
Please. Thank you. It is. I have to be nice to them too. On behalf of Tallahassee Memorial Animal Therapy, I'd like to thank you all for recognizing our volunteers and all the wonderful work that they do in the community. We really enjoy what we do, spreading love of our feathered and furry friends with our community, and my dog likes to wander. Here, please. Thank you. And we look forward to many more years of continuing our service here in Tallahassee and serving those in need with our animals. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I now want to ask if the Boy Scouts of America Troop 114 will stand where they are. We are visited tonight by Scoutmaster Eddie Jackson, Assistant Scoutmaster Ms. Lisa Luciani, and Committee Chair Victoria Heller. They were with us just across the street as we unveiled the new hazmat vehicle. I believe that you all may be working on your citizenship badge, and we want to welcome you to this meeting of the Tallahassee City Commission and wish each and every one of you the very best. I know there are a couple of Boy Scouts that are up here. At least I know Curtis.
Serve on the council.
That at least serve on the council. And I'm not sure if there are any other appointed officials who may have served. We all wanted to be you and were able, but we want to thank you all for being here. Will you please join me in honoring this great troop? I want to now invite down, thank you all, you may be seated. I now want to invite down my colleagues to join me for this next quick presentation. If y'all don't mind, I'm going to ask if the Lincoln High School baseball team would rise and join us at the front of the room here. And just as they are coming, everybody, I want you to know that this is an award-winning group right here. And if my colleagues could join me. On Saturday, June 3rd, the Lincoln baseball team captured the Class A8 state title with a 5-1 win over Haggerty and Fort Myers. This is their first state championship in the program's history and the history of the Trojans. Will y'all give these folks a round of applause? The Trojans 26-6 ended their season on a 19-game win streak. The Trojans are Tallahassee's first public school to win a state title since Godby's win in 2001. Congratulations to first-year Lincoln coach Mike Gauger, who is here, athletic director Joe Valise, assistant coaches Matt Robinson, Chris Milstead, Jason Pennell, Mike Chappelle, Bruce Williams, team managers, statisticians and trainers, Jackson White, T.C. Collins, Kerry Jones, and principal of Lincoln High School, Dr. Alan Birch. Well, all those individuals just wave where you are. Or at least one of them's up. A couple of them are up here. Give them a round of applause. I also want to acknowledge, and as I call your name, if you're here, if you'll wave right where you stand, these are the players from this award-winning team. Beginning with Jordan Yulee, Taj Cunningham, Zach Taylor, Connor Burke, Juan Houston, Jesse Hall, Dylan Barrett, Hank Evans, Noah Kodamach. Is Kodamach, does your dad work for the city? Okay, there it is. Chad Corvo, Nick Standriff, Bo Evans, Austin Pollock, Sean Randolph, Josiah Miller, Connor Randolph, Hunter Peschel, if you're here, Miles McCord, and Dallin Leach. Will you give all of these individuals a great, great round of applause tonight? I want to invite one representative forward to just talk a little bit about that, and then maybe my colleagues and I can join you all for a quick picture. Who do y'all want to throw into the den? I'm going to walk away, and whoever takes it gets it.
What am I supposed to say?
Whatever you like.
On stage, baby.
Am I supposed to say thank you? Thank you for love? Whatever I want?
Make it legal.
I really don't know what to say, to be honest. God, thank you. Thank you very much for having us this evening, and I'm very proud of Coach Gorger in his first year, and the boys worked really hard all year. I appreciate you honoring us like this. It means a lot for Lincoln High School to be here in this type of forum. So once again, thank you very much.
Congratulations. I wish I was very bad. Thank you very much. Awesome, awesome, awesome.
I got your phone.
And I assume a team like this is probably practicing this summer? All right. We wish you the very best, and thank you for the way in which you represent this community. Last but certainly not least, I want to invite forward Miss Kinsey Locke. Give her a round of applause as she comes. All right. Well, you can probably guess, as Kinsey is adorned, that Kinsey was crowned the National Elite Miss Florida this past fall. Will y'all give her a round of applause again? Now, she won the National Spokesmodel title for girls ages 3 to 24. You competed with girls between the age of 3 and 24? And she won, y'all. She won the Mini Miss State Costume Award, created her own platform called Kinsey's Cuddle for Kids, collects and donates stuffed animals to our local Tallahassee Fire Department. These stuffed animals would be given to kids that are involved in a car accident, fire, or any situation where the fire department has responded. Kinsey's goal is to donate 200 animals before her term as National Elite Mini Miss is over. I hope that you all would join me in congratulating once again Miss National Elite Miss Florida, as well as Miss National Elite Mini Miss, for her great accomplishment and the great way in which she represents our city. Give her a round of applause, please. Anything you want to say?
Thank you.
What I did at the pageant was have a lot of fun, and I met new people and friends, and it was really, really fun.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
if Kinsey would share the way that we could help with that drive to get the animals, we would love to do that. If you'll let us know how we can get animals to you or how other people can. We all have newsletters, and we can send out a notice about what you're doing, and hopefully we'll use that, we'll get your picture. And I think you're going to have a lot more than 200 animals.
Okay, so the stuffed animals can be donated to Kinsley for Kinsley's Cuddles for Kids, and you can drop them off you can contact me on Facebook. My name is Jessica Locke, or you can drop them off at our preschool, which is Great Beginnings Preschool. We are located at 1904 Talpico Road, which is like the Lake Jackson side of town. And if you can't get to that side of town, then if you contact me, I will be happy to meet up with you, or Dad can meet up with you, and we'll get them that way. It doesn't matter. Any way that you can get it to her, then we'll take it. And they don't have to be brand new. They can be like new as long as there's no rips or stains or tears, no missing eyeballs or anything like that. But thank you for having us, and thank you for helping us out with this cause. We hope to get to 200 before she goes back to crown the new national queen next summer.
Nice.
Pretty neat.
Mayor Commissioner Berkowitz, where are you?
Okay.
Stand where you are. I just want to quickly acknowledge, it's not often that we get graced with the presence that once someone leaves this chamber after their service, they voluntarily come back. You have. I want to acknowledge that the Mayor Commissioner last served this government in 1968, if I'm not mistaken. 1968. 11 years before I was born. And we want to again thank you for your continued work and support, largely of our first responders, our fire department. Thank you for joining us just behind City Hall a few moments ago. And we just appreciate your continued support of this government and obviously the departments that help make it up. Will y'all give the Mayor Commissioner a round of applause? All right, Commissioners, we're now at the point of the agenda where we will hear presentations, if I'm not mistaken. And nope, we done that. We're now on citizens' input on agenda items. Treasurer Clerk, are there any speakers?
Mayor, I do have one speaker, Steve Gasvini, on item 9.13, which is on your consent agenda. As he comes, I'll remind him and other speakers for later in our meeting that you'll have 3 minutes for your remarks. If you'll give your name and address for the record, we would appreciate it. Mayor, just as information, I do have a speaker form from Dave Bruns, but I believe he'll actually be part of the item 11.1 with Choose Tallahassee, so he'll speak at that time.
Thank you.
Steve Gasvini, 4708 Capitol Circle Northwest. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. Manager, we have an item in front of you tonight. I'm here to announce that the first phase of canopy is about to, with your consent, is going to get recorded. I just wanted to thank the commissioners, the manager, all the staff for a very, very cooperative and helpful cooperation. It's a big project, a lot of challenges in it, but staff at every corner, hung in there with us and supported the project. And we're looking forward to have a very good and successful project for our community. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Gasvini. I appreciate it. Are there any other speakers?
No, sir.
All right, Commissioners, we've exhausted the citizen input portion of the meeting, and now we have.
Move consent?
Second.
Oh, we've got to, before we do that, we have to adjourn as the City Commission, and we will come back to take up the items on consent. I'm going to ask our friends and partners who serve with the City Commission on the Sinking Fund Board to please join us on the dais. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. All right, we will now come back to order as the sinking fund of the City of Tallahassee. We do have item 8.01. Treasurer Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I introduce the item, I'd like to introduce the members of the Sinking Fund Commission. As you know, as elected officials, the 5 of you are part of the Sinking Fund Commission. We also have 3 citizens who serve us quite ably as our Investment Advisory Committee. They meet with us on a quarterly basis, but they also serve the important function of working with you on the Sinking Fund Commission. Working from my right and the left of those observing the meeting, Mike Stalick, Nan Hillis, and Carl Munson. I'll point out that both Mr. Stalick and Ms. Hillis are not necessarily brand new to the Investment Advisory Committee, but they are new since the last time we came and met with this larger group as the Sinking Fund Commission. So I want to be sure to welcome Mike and Nan and thank them for their service. And I also will point out that Mr. Munson has served for some time, and this will be the final meeting on his term of service. And so I want to thank him for all of his good work. He has served 2 consecutive terms, as most of our boards and committees do. That's the limit, and so he will rotate off. And I want to be sure to especially thank Carl for his good work.
Indeed. Thank you very much for your service, and welcome, obviously, back into this board. And I'll yield the microphone for the item.
Okay. As you are well aware, we have a City Commission policy to address guidelines for pension investments, and we also have a City Commission policy to address the guidelines for our non-pension investments. And each of those requires approval of the Sinking Fund Commission to make changes to either one of them. In that capacity, or in that realm, tonight's agenda item deals with our non-pension investment policy, and that comes back to you for your review and approval. We've, as staff, have worked with this for a number of months. We brought this to our quarterly meeting with the Investment Advisory Committee in May, had a good discussion there and was approved there, and so we're bringing it forward to you tonight. The changes in the policy I don't think are completely, there are no significant changes. We continue to have the same investment avenues and capability categories, that sort of thing, but what we have asked is for some changes in the percentages that we're allowed to invest in, both from the portion managed internally as well as the portion where we have external managers participating. Those changes are outlined in your agenda item. They're numbered 1 through 5. There also should be attached to your agenda a copy of the policy, one that's clean with the changes, another version that was blacklined so that you could see those. With that introduction, that's the item before you, and I will turn it over to you, Mayor.
Great. Thank you very much, Treasurer Clerk. Are there any questions or a motion on the item?
Move option 1.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on option 1. Any questions, comments? Other. Commissioner Miller, followed by Commissioner Ziffer.
I just wanted to ask the members of the Sinking Fund Committee if they have any comments. Okay, good. Thank you.
We reviewed it in May. I think I didn't have any further comments.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Ziffer.
I just wanted to thank you for, your time that you put into this and your advice. These are clearly things that you are far more knowledgeable than we are, so we look to that. And I want to thank you for your service. That's all I wanted to say.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Commissioners, there's a motion and a second for staff recommendation. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. I hate that we make y'all get dressed up and come down here for such quick meetings, but I know, as you've already heard expressed, that the City Commission thoroughly appreciates the expertise by which you all bring to this work. Member Munson, thank you very much for your dedicated and committed service, and look forward to calling you back into service in some other capacity, I'm certain. Thank you, and with that, the Sinking Fund is adjourned.
Thank you.
Yes. Commissioners will now reconvene here as the City Commission.
Move consent.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve consent. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. 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 Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioners, we're now at the point in the meeting for City Commission items. And I know our staff is shuffling back up here, so I'll give them a moment. If Dustin could make his, already, my bad.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll just invite Dave Bruns from Choose Tallahassee to come and give a short presentation.
Right.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, members of the staff. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you also for the generous support that the city has provided us over the years. I don't know if y'all have had an opportunity to review our 2017 progress report, which I believe has been provided for you. I think it is worth your review. I would want to call out a couple of things for your attention, and I want to start first by making clear that we are asking for a renewal of your 2-year commitment in 2015 and 2016 to financially support Choose Tallahassee in the amount of $10,000 per year. They trained me in journalism to get the most important stuff up front. The point, there are several points I want to try to make here. One, I have been here before on a couple of different occasions explaining the potential economic development benefit, as well as the benefit in many other ways to the community of attracting the 50-plus population. I want to repeat a couple of points that I've made before. One point is about 80% of our nation's wealth is in the hands of people 50 and older. That's a pretty significant statistic. If we can attract a significant number of folks with those means to this community, that is a very significant potential economic benefit for our community. I would also refer you to some items in the report. This is now happening in Tallahassee. And I'm not sure that we're all aware of this. According to the Office of Economic Vitality, between 2010 and 2015, overall county population growth was 0.6% for 5 years. So that equates to a little more than 1% growth over a 10-year period. The 50-plus, I'm sorry, the growth of the 65 to 79 population in that 5-year period was 6.1%. We had a total growth of around 9,000 people in the county. That's an estimate, but around 9,000 people. 8,900 of those were 50 and older. That's an interesting statistic. It's a very interesting statistic for a community that has, to a significant degree, based its economic health on the influx of 60,000 college students. So when we talk about diversifying our economy, when we talk about creating jobs, when we talk about providing opportunities for millennials and creatives to grow and prosper here, we don't want to forget about this initiative. I did want to make that point. Let me say briefly that we think we have made some significant strides in our initiative in the last 2 years. One of the things that we're doing is we're shifting our focus from a big annual contest for essentially to give away a year's free retirement. We're now shifting to a focus of smaller contests that are more frequent. And that allows us to use more of our resources for the purpose of marketing. And really this is a marketing and it's a branding initiative. There's been a lot of talk in the community within the last few months about the issue of branding. Who are we? What do we offer people? I think Choose Tallahassee helps us say to people all across the country, this is a wonderful place to live. This is a great community. We're all proud of the quality of life that we have here. And we are more than welcoming to people of any background, any religion, any outlook. Y'all come. We would love to have you here. And I think that Choose Tallahassee is helping to spread that message. I don't think that our initiative is the only thing that is driving this very strong trend, demographic trend, but I think it's one of the things. And this is possible in significant part because of your support, and we thank you. Commissioners, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Right. Well, let me first thank you. You all have been tireless advocates for the Tallahassee-Leon County community. The national contest that takes place, you get entries from all around the country and probably beyond to come and experience what we offer here in the city of Tallahassee. So we're real fortunate to have you all out there as real cheerleaders. Not only that, though, at least in my experience, the folks who have won previously have chosen to stay in our community. They've spent some good time and they've had great things to say about who we are as a community. So thank you, and we wish you well as you continue to advocate on behalf of the city of Tallahassee. Commissioner Ziffer.
I just wanted to expand and throw some other numbers out there that I had seen recently. On I think it was in 2010, it was something like 7 to 1. The percentage of relationship between those under 65 and working, 18 to 65 as compared to over 65. And in the year 2030, that's going to be cut in half because of the baby boomers that already live here that are going to be moving into that slot, not to mention the people that are going to be moving here. And that's a huge shift for our community. That means how we deal with housing, how we deal with transportation, all sorts of issues like that. So if you're watching this or you're paying attention to read about it, our population in this city is aging. And what you're trying to do expands on the fact that the reason why it's aging and they're staying here is because people that live here know how great it is, and that secret's getting out. So I think you're doing a great job. I want to be supportive of whatever you do, so thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Just let me chime in on that, Commissioner, on one point. And taking off my Choose Tallahassee hat and putting on my AARP hat for a moment, I am Communication Manager for AARP Florida, and on behalf of AARP, let me say thank you for joining the World Health Organization AARP Network for Age-Friendly Communities. We've been working with the staff on this, and the cooperation and the collaboration we've gotten is just outstanding. And Commissioner Ziffer, the work that has been done in the city on making Tallahassee a dementia-friendly community is of tremendous significance. It's a huge health issue that we'll be facing on an increasing basis as our population ages. But anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate it. If I can be of any assistance to anyone, please let me know. Oh, one other thing I want to mention. My term as chair ends in September, and Michelle Bono will actually be our new chair.
All right. That's great to know.
Name sounds familiar.
I thought it might to some folks.
Thank
Great.
you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
All right,
again.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruns.
I want to yield again to Dustin Daniels for item 11.02, legislative update.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'll be relatively brief and happy to answer any comments that you all might have. So we are at the end, obviously, of our 2017 legislative session completed a few months ago. It seems like dysfunction and discord over at the Capitol comes every 2 years. If you all recall, at the end of 2015, the process essentially getting pushed off the rails, and then 2016 being a pretty successful year in terms of cooperation, and also for the city of Tallahassee to include the hazmat vehicle that we just toured right before the beginning of the meeting, and then obviously leading up to this past year, which again saw some more infighting and discord that included the fact that the legislature was not able to actually have a budget by the end of the regularly scheduled session, to include also a special session that they had to convene to also address a number of issues related to education, related to marijuana and so forth. We had about 3,000 bills that were filed, which was probably the highest number of bills that were filed probably since the early 2000s, but also saw the lowest numbers of bills passed since the early 2000s. Out of 3,000, only 250 actually passed. We also saw what we have pretty much characterized as almost unprecedented attack on local government, quite frankly, in terms of not only legislation that sought to preempt local government, but also policies that in some ways threaten the job that local governments do on a daily basis in the economic development space. In addition to the bills that were passed, there were also 11 bills that were vetoed. The governor nixed, in the initial phase of his vetoes, $11.96 billion. It's by far the most that he's ever vetoed from the budget. I think the second most was $615 million in 2012, sparking the fact that we had to have a special session. Within those vetoes, about 400 member projects from around the state were included in that, to include a project that we were advocating for with the county focused on some storm hardening infrastructure investments that we're attempting to be successful on. One of the things I can say, I think, as it relates to at least advancing the appropriation items that the city puts forward on a daily basis, or excuse me, on a yearly basis. What we saw, obviously, in 2015, we had something similar where we had a number of projects that we were successfully able to get into the budget, and then when it got to the governor's desk, we weren't successful in keeping them in the budget. And then in 2016, we were. So I think a lot of that potentially could play out again as we enter what is going to be an early 2018 session. Obviously, committee weeks start in September, and so we're already in the process of getting our legislative agenda together as a city. But I think as it relates especially to our storm hardening efforts and a number of other issues, it takes more than a year sometimes for us to educate our local legislative delegation and a number of the other folks to help essentially see the value in why investing in those things makes sense for the city and for our community. The last thing I just want to mention is obviously as we sort of are, I guess, regrouping from state stuff, we're also focusing on a number of federal items to include appropriations, to include things like sanctuary cities legislation that we've seen passed in the House, and also the Gulf Coast Rail Service. Actually, the mayor and I just had a meeting this morning with CSX focused on sort of their needs and their perspective from the working group side of things. And actually today at 4 o'clock, actually just before the meeting started, the actual report was finally released, and it's a couple of months late. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but it is in my inbox, and so we'll obviously do a thorough analysis and get something back to you as quickly as we can. Other than that, we continue to, again, stay as active as we can. The process will be for us to reach out to the different departments to basically allow them to flag what their issues are going to be and what their appropriation needs may be as well for this upcoming year. And then obviously we'll bring that list of agenda items back to you for approval before legislative session begins. With that, Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Miller.
Dustin, could you share with us the local projects that were approved and not vetoed?
From the city of Tallahassee side? Or do you mean just in general?
Even Leon County, city and Leon County.
Well, I mean, there was a number of, so from the local government standpoint, there were not a lot of projects from a member project standpoint that were approved. From a standpoint of like Florida State and FAMU, there were a number of university projects that made it into the budget. There was initially, I want to basically pull this number, $108 million was initially vetoed from the budget in the higher education space. A lot of that money also affected FAMU and FSU, and then about $60 million of it was then reinstated. So, and a lot of that money was beneficial to the universities. Outside of our higher education partners, to include TCC, who obviously was very adamant about the governor vetoing the bill that basically took a lot of funding away from colleges. Not a whole lot of local member projects that we were able to get in the budget.
Pay raise.
Could you send us some written material outlining some of these things?
Sure, absolutely.
Commissioner Ziffer.
I wanted to have the presentation. I requested to have this on this agenda because I've got issues. And every time we talk about lobbying, I bring up the same issues, but this time I'm going to actually have a motion at the end of this conversation. The first thing is this Speaker of the House, Richard Corcoran, has made it very clear to cities around the state. He doesn't want us to have lobbyists. He's made that very clear. And he has said, if you got lobbyists, I don't want to see. I want to see people from your cities. We have people from all over this state. Populations of 5,000 people to 500,000 or 1 million people that come here and they go sit down and talk with their legislative delegations and they talk with other folks. They do that every year. I'm going to ask you this question because you and I have had this conversation I've asked before. How many of us were engaged by our lobbyists this year and by you to go see our legislators on specific issues? Because I was never engaged.
Got it. So, Commissioner, if you recall, we've had a number of sit-downs one-on-one where I've made that offer to you. Our local lobbyists as well have made that offer to you in your position as well as at the Florida League of Cities. I know that you're engaged in a number of these issues. So we obviously can be more specific, but from my standpoint, what we have attempted to do is be very inclusive of everybody so that you all see from a transparent perspective what we're working on, and then to the extent that folks want to be engaged on any of those issues, that we're happy to do that.
I've met with Bill Peoples. I've met with the Ackerman folks. I haven't met with our local lobbyists in years. Haven't seen one, haven't heard from one in years. Additionally, our lobbyist out of Miami had a real conflict of interest this year because that firm represented AT&T on the communications bill, which was a preemption against local government. And that's a conflict of interest for us because, quite frankly, our government, at least I did because I went over and testified, tried to fight that. Our lobbyist was on the other side of the table. I'm not getting a good feeling about this coming year that's going to get any better. I will tell you that I was able to work with Bill Monford, and I was able to work with Halsey Bashirs to get $150,000 for Alzheimer's project. That passed. That went through. When we work with our local legislative delegation, things can happen. So this is what I'm going to suggest, and I'm going to make a motion because we are in a tight budget year. I think we get good results from our federal lobbyists. I think we get good results when it comes to our utility. But I'm going to make a motion this coming year that we suspend our local lobbyist effort because we're not getting our money's worth. We're not getting our money's worth, not to mention this speaker, who has a lot of power, has told us he doesn't want us to have local lobbyists. I don't kowtow to the legislature, but you know something? When it comes to try to get things passed, I'm going to listen a little bit because I think I have to. So I am putting a motion that this year we withhold or we suspend at least through the 2017-18 year, which is coming up, our local lobbyist efforts. And if there's no appetite to second or vote, that's fine. But I feel strongly because, Dustin, we have talked about this and you have not engaged us. And our lobbyists have not engaged us. Commissioner Maddox and I are going over, I think he's going over to Northwest Florida because we're getting recognized by the Florida League of Cities because of being home rule heroes, because we went over there on our own. Everybody else?
I went.
I certainly
Okay, I
went.
apologize.
I think all of us went.
Did you?
There's a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it for the
There's a motion and a second to the motion.
For discussion.
I'll just say,
change in the future, but for
I
today.
know that we had, first of all, I would have, this is sort of a big question with big policy implications that, in my opinion, probably should have been agended with certainly the opportunity for our lobbyists who we pay, who we've hired to provide us, one, to be here, right? Dustin is obviously our chief of staff and directs the work of our lobbyists, but they, in my opinion, they should have had an opportunity to respond and to be here. But the other thing is that the speaker is not a fan of a lot of things, and least of which local government. Some of us saw the spat that took place between Commissioner Deloge, where he wrote a very, I thought, very strong and well-worded piece on preemption and got the smackdown from the Speaker of the House in another publication in this state. He has no interest in local governments, and I think it's been made very, very clear the threats that have come toward local government have been unbelievable and I think unprecedented in this last legislative session. I certainly went up, met with the Speaker, met with the Senate President, did so at the request of our lobbyists, sat down with our members to include Bill Mumford, who I think all of us logged calls to say, please do not vote for this bill that would strip local government of their funding, and unfortunately we were not successful in that effort. Unfortunately, I think in this legislative session, we all have to hold on for good graces because from year to year, depending upon what the mood is between the House and the Senate and the gubernatorial leadership, there really isn't any telling what happens and what we get from there. Now, I have heard on repeated occasions and have seen in emails requests for any of us to indicate wherein we can be helpful during the legislative process. To include speaking with department folks, I know I've done that.
If I could just jump in as well, Mayor, I just wanted to say.
I'm going to finish. But to include the opportunity to go and to be present with the various departments. I think I reported back to the commission that I drove over to Chipley just for a good housekeeping meeting. I mean, there was no agenda other than to say, we want to be your friends. And to the extent that we have done something either at the CRTPA or through the staff level or any other way that has offended you, please tell us, because we need to make that relationship right. So there have been plenty of encounters, and I do think that there are ways in which to have impact at that level as well. But it will require all of us to be very present and engaged in that process. I will not support the motion tonight because, one, I think it is deserving of more thoughtful engagement, and one that does allow the folks that we have hired and contracted to do this work to respond to those issues. And I also think that we should surface those with our lobbyists directly when they come and see us, but also to our office such that we can communicate them to them in a professional way that we're not happy, but we did just renew. And I think that is deserving of a respectful dialogue between the folks we hire. Commissioner Miller, followed by Commissioner.
I think that it's really not a question of the fact that people have worked hard, because everyone has, all of you have, and contacting the legislature. I think it's a question of organizing us. As today, for an example, we have a tremendous number of issues on the table on any given day, any given week. And all of us have different initiatives we're involved in trying to move forward. So, but I was organized by the League of Cities to go and do my part over at the legislature. We need to know when a committee meeting is. We need to know who the principals on a particular bill are. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of information that we need in order to act, and that's, I think, the point that Commissioner Ziffer is trying to make. I think if this motion that's on the table really should push us into a situation where we do have this agenda'd and we do have more in-depth conversations with folks, and we do determine some ways that we can become more well-directed by our lobbyists. I know that they are very busy too. They have a lot of clients and they have a lot of issues. So somewhere in the mix, we need to make a little bit of an alteration to make this more effective on our parts and to get us over there on the ground next session, because it's before January. We need to have this lined up so that we have a good idea of how we're going to be involved. And that's why I seconded the motion.
Agreed. I'll also say we should not, the League of Cities' effort at organizing local governments is not gratuitous. We pay them a good amount of money to do exactly what they do by helping to organize us. And I think it is a beneficial and worthwhile relationship. It is not one without.
I think we pay our lobbyists too.
Well, no. I'm just saying, no one's being gratuitous here. We pay the league to do the work that they do, and we pay our lobbyists to do the work that they also do. Commissioner Ziffer.
Dustin, I'm going to ask you to put together a more in-depth program to engage the people up on this dais to take a more active role in lobbying our legislature when it comes to the items that we feel are important for this commission and this city. If you can do that and then manage that with the lobbyists so that we can go over there and help them, I'm going to withdraw my motion. But the fact of the matter is, when I see cities from all over the state engaging over there and we're not as organized as they are, we can do better. And that's, I think, everybody that's sitting up here thinks and knows that we can do better. So you're in charge of this. I've asked it, I don't even know how many times. We have to do a better job. You're in charge of this. You have to manage us better. I don't think there's anybody here that wouldn't go talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime, particularly when it comes to doing a better job for our citizens. So I'm going to assume you're going to do that, so I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Right. Thank you. Commissioner Maddox.
I think it'd also be helpful to
to meet with our lobbyists, the city lobbyists. I can't tell you the last time I met with Mr. Book. 3 years, maybe 2, 3 years. So the federal lobbyists, when they're in Tallahassee, they meet with each one of us. So I think that would be helpful, is to set up meetings with the state lobbyists as well, to come see each commissioner and update them as we go.
I agree with that. And I will say, you're right, the federal lobbyists make their rounds to see each of us individually. I see Mr. Book in passing when we're up here and a few scheduled opportunities. But I think that's completely fair, that when they're up here, that they spend the time to come with us. I'd also add that on an issue where local government, or at least where this city is on the opposite side, I think that we ought to be flagged by our lobbyists where they may be working on the other side of our issue. I think that's also a fair request and consideration. Now, the truth is I think we all know this, no matter what lobbyists we hire, unless they work and are embedded in the League of Cities or the Association of Counties, well, not to include them, but just us, that they're likely to have other folks that they are representing. I think that's the nature of the beast. But I do think it's appropriate that we be flagged. Commissioner, I also was talking to members on the other side of that communications issue, particularly as it relates to some of the incumbent communication companies, because of the issue that local governments had with that. And I didn't know Mr. Book was on the other side of that, but we ought to be flagged on those issues.
Thank you,
Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, Dustin, that you heard the commission's frustration with this. As a former legislator, I've offered a number. I mean, the Senate president was one of my classmates. We were elected the same year. The incoming Senate president was in that same class. We served on committees together, but not once have I been asked to even make a phone call, to one of my former colleagues or any of my colleagues on issues important to the city of Tallahassee. And I just got to the point where I didn't ask anymore. And I think all of us could be a valuable resource to our lobbying team if we're included in that effort to the degree that we can. I mean, I work full-time as well, so I don't have a lot of time, but I can certainly make phone calls, I can send emails, and would do whatever I could to assist. But we haven't been engaged. I have yet to see the plan by our lobbyists on how we take our issues before the legislature and where each of us can be involved in that effort. And so I think you've heard that frustration, and I wouldn't want to go so far as to say we not engage a lobbyist, Commissioner Ziffer, but certainly our process and approach is going to have to change as we go forward.
I think those are duly noted.
Thank you.
And I think in order to ensure that we don't go another legislative session before we end up here again, I think, Dustin, it'd be great if we could organize to have our lobbyists, get meetings scheduled between now and committee week, which will begin in September. We will be on break, but we come back at the end of August. So that part of the agenda is at least a little bit more clear. And I also, just for our benefit, over the summer, we'll be getting back from various departments what they consider priorities, and then have that presented before the commission for our sign-off so that we're also clear on what it is that we're going in there and asking for.
When folks, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Please, no.
When folks come see us about neighborhood issues, they're the best ones to talk with us.
Totally.
Because we know what's happening on the ground. And while our lobbyists know how things work over there, there's no one better than to talk about what our needs are than the five of us. And so and I've said it before, we need to be engaged. We need to have a plan. Mayor, you said it, we're going to have a better idea by the end of the summer what the needs of the city are. And let's just try to do a better job this year. Because I said, I don't do what the speaker says. I'm not following what the speaker says, but the speaker's made it very clear that from leadership standpoint, they'd rather see us. So let's go do that.
That's fair. Thank you, Commissioners, very much.
Yeah, I
Thank
just
you,
wanted to
Dennis.
say, I think the other thing that would be helpful for me is the some accountability. I think when we send those emails out and we send, updates about what's going on at the Capitol, there are a number of you who respond and we follow up with information. Commissioner Miller, we do that within 24 hours every time you reach out about something. Commissioner Richardson, when guns on campus are your issue, anytime somebody moves or breathes on that piece of legislation, you're aware of it. Commissioner Ziffer, the reason why Bill Peebles spoke to you last year and tried to get you more involved in the issue of public right-of-way was because I asked him to do that after you flagged me and said that that was something that you wanted to do. And Commissioner Maddox, when you've said in the past, obviously airport being your issue and something that you want to work on, that was the reason why you were with us every step of the way when we received the funding for it in 2016. So I'm happy to be as sort of planned and engaged with you all as possible. My request of you, though, is to essentially let me know what those issues are for you of expertise. I completely agree that it's better to hear from the local elected officials themselves who represent the community, but I also recognize that there are issue experts up here and some issues over others, right? Environmental water policy. Maybe there are folks who are particularly interested in that area that would be helpful for me to understand how exactly we can get you engaged. And the last thing I'll say is, even though I think the speaker, as the mayor said, has a whole lot of issues with a whole lot of things, if you look at where other places money was appropriated and where it wasn't vetoed, those communities have lobbyists as well. So paying lip service to whether or not lobbyists are actually a problem in the process or whether they're actually a deal breaker, I mean, I have some reservations about taking him at his word on that, and I think that the numbers speak for themselves.
Thank you, Dustin. Commissioners, as we're trying to move on to the next item, what I hear very clearly, and I think what we can address between this time and the time we go into committee week, one is making sure we get our lobbyists to meet individually with us. And then once they have gathered our input and I think expertise and priorities, they can then return to us again with a plan a plan of attack, if you will. And I choose those words directly because I think we're in a real battle to preserve not only our interests, but the interests of local governments, period, through this legislative session. So message, I think, delivered and received there. And I think you'll see some coming in the coming couple of days. All right, Commissioners, we're now on to...
Thank you all.
Thank you. Commissioners, we're now on to 11.03.
I'd like to say
The
formally
confirmation.
goodbye to the Boy Scouts.
Yes.
Thank you, Scouts.
Thank y'all.
Thank you for coming.
That should have certainly had you earn your badge. Thank y'all. Enjoy the summer. Commissioners, we're now at City Commission item 11.3, which is the confirmation and appointment of citizens to the Tallahassee-Leon County Planning Commission. Is there a motion on the
Move
item?
approval of the item, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Also want to thank Commissioner Miller for her recommendation in this section. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioners, now we're on to item 11.04, Sinking Fund Commission appointment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes. 11.05, appointment or reappointment of Airport Advisory Committee.
Move approval.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes. Introduction of items. There are no items this evening to be introduced. Policy formation and direction. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 13.01 is an update on your annexation process and policy. Periodically, we update these. The agenda item lays out the changes, and Matt Mathurin is here to answer any questions that you may have, or he can walk through a presentation.
I move approval.
There is a motion
Second.
and a second on approval. Any items of pertinent nature we should know before that's not in the agenda? Commissioner Maddox, followed by Commissioner Miller.
I just want to make the point that this government has deliberately pushed annexation for a long period of time. City Manager Dan Clayman was instrumental in that many years ago, and we were featured in a book called Cities Without Borders or Elastic Cities. I think it was one of the two of those, as being an example of having a sensible, aggressive annexation policy. And when you saw years ago people move out of city limits and moved to the suburbs, and the line didn't keep pace with them, then there was no tax base in the city itself, and the city couldn't provide services, leading to a downward spiral. Tallahassee did not do that and continued to grow at the same pace as people moving in areas that wanted urban services. So what you see today is a county that, 68%, probably something like that, is in the city limits? 80 in population, but I mean, when you look at 80% of the population's in the city limits, but when you look at the actually square miles, and we have kept pace by when you see denser developments come in, we offer for them to be in the city so they get the urban services of being in a city. It becomes an automatic process, and we've continued to keep pace. So I think it's a great policy and something we should continue.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Miller.
Well, thank you. With all due respect, I'm going to be voting against this. I think that a lot of the concentration of folks in the urban services area or into the city itself has more to do with comprehensive planning which came into effect around toward the end of Mr. Clayman's period here. I do think that all those annexations were very, very important to the city, but right now I'm not happy with the management it's not that. You've heard me talk about infrastructure maintenance all the time for the last 6 years, and we're just now getting to the point where we are beginning to address that. When we inherit, if you want to talk about annexation of a piece of property that's undeveloped, then I'm all about it. We can talk about that all day long. But I'm not going to ever be supportive of annexing anything else, with rare exception, that the county's permitted and developed. We are still dealing in Killarn with, good Lord, we've spent more stormwater fee money in Killarn than the residents of Killarn have actually paid during the entire lifetime of that fee. We have trying to solve problems that were not addressed when it was permitted. The lakes, there's a continual argument over the lakes, in which we have pictures of tractors in the lakes digging them out so that they can be the receiving water bodies. We're still arguing 30 some odd years later over this. So I'm not on board of just going out and annexing for the sake of annexing. If there is a worthy piece of property that wants to come in and be part of the city's permitting process, or at some point in time they have indicated that along the way and have built their development to standards that are acceptable to the city, then that's fine. And the other thing that's not fair is that once we annex a neighborhood, say for example, there's an expectation level, and the folks should have an expectation level of the services they are now going to be paying for. So we're going to be obligated to get in there, and it's not just about this little chart that's in our agenda items where, oh, gee, we're going to get some more tax money. It's about the fact that we're going to have to put a pretty good hefty chunk of change into an investment in that neighborhood, and we should, because if we're going to annex a neighborhood, then we owe it to the people who live there. But I don't see that as being financially feasible at this point, and when we get to the point where we have got our bases covered with the existing city, with I don't want existing city residents to have to be picking up the tab for our making infrastructure improvements in a neighborhood where we just decided it would be nice to have that in the city either. So for those reasons, I'm going to be voting against this.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Commissioners, I believe our ordinance already requires a certain upgrades and conditions be made before we would even consider annexation into the city. And like Commissioner Maddox, I do think that there are probably some places, certainly some that I can think of, that are adjacent to the city limit. I mean, they're right there. Frankly, should have access to urban services, and frankly do have access to urban services and don't pay what it costs for the benefit that is gained. So the update on the policy, fully appreciate. Obviously, there's some conditions we have to take based off of the situation. Commissioner Richardson?
Yeah, I would just add, Mr. Mayor, that it does say on a case-by-case basis. So it won't be just blanket annexation because somebody ask for it. And I would hope that we would have standards that have to be met before we come in and even consider that annexation, let alone approve it.
Yes, Commissioner, that is what we are proposing as a case-by-case basis. Also, we've instituted a pre-application process for voluntary pre-development, and we would carry that over into any post-development. So we would go through, and in that meeting, we meet with development services staff on both sides of the aisle, city and county staff, as well as utility folks.
Okay. And today, pre-development annexation is welcomed, correct? Under our policy, so what Commissioner Miller was saying, so pre-development, vacant land in the urban service area, closest, adjacent city limits is welcomed.
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Commissioners, there is a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. 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 Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioners, just a quick.
Still voted.
I'm sorry, 4-1, motion passes. Commissioners, we adjourned the budget meeting a little bit sooner than our opportunity to consider staff recommendations. So I'm just going to read it because I'm sure y'all don't have your budget books with you. It's very quick, but we will need a motion to this end. Option 1 is to provide feedback on update of fiscal year 2018 budget process, accept update on third quarter fiscal year 17 budget process, approve the appropriation of $500,000 in undesignated water systems charges for the water distribution master project item 17087. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Now we are on to 13.01, the electric utility mutual aid update.
Yes, sir. 13.02.
Sorry, 2.
That's okay. As you know, Commissioners, our electric utility has had agreement with other municipal utilities over the years for mutual aid, and we've provided help and received help. The IOUs, or the investor-owned utilities, have always been hesitant to join us in that endeavor because generally their territories go beyond the state of Florida, and they have commitments other places. But over the last year, we've worked together and come to an agreement so that now the municipals and investor-owned utilities will work together to provide mutual aid. Rob McGarrah and Richard Ash worked over the last few months to come up with this agreement. They were part of the team, and they're here to answer any questions and provide an update if you like.
Move approval.
There's a motion and a second on approval. Just one piece here, Rob. There's much said about this, but if you could just restate what the facts are, and that is the city of Tallahassee does have mutual aid agreements and does accept mutual aid agreements from private utilities.
We do. That's correct, Mayor. We've got mutual aid agreements. During Hermine, we accepted mutual aid from both Public Power, which is municipally owned, and privately owned utilities. This work has updated that process and streamlined and enhanced how we'll work together with the investor-owned utilities. We've got a separate set of agreements with the co-ops, the cooperatives like Talquin, and all of our public power sister utilities around the country that have been in place for years too. So.
Got it. Thank you very much. Commissioners, there's a motion and a second on this item. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. 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 Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Item 13.03, City Manager.
Thank you, sir. The joint Tallahassee-Leon County Local Mitigation Strategy is an existing plan that identifies natural and other hazards faced by the community and proposes a series of mitigation initiatives intended to reduce these hazards and their potential impacts. This plan also ensures the City of Tallahassee's eligibility for federal and state assistance for natural or man-made disasters, including Hurricane Hermine last year. Staff requests that the Commission adopt via resolution this update to the 2015 Tallahassee-Leon County LMS and to approve the amended LMS Steering Committee bylaws. Cherie Bryan is here to answer any questions.
Move the item, Mr. Mayor.
There's a motion.
Second.
And a second to approve staff recommendation. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. We're now on to item 13.04, City Manager.
Item 13.04 requests your approval of the request for proposal for the sale of the City of Tallahassee's Waterworks building. Judy Donahoe is here to answer any questions.
Commissioners, and Commissioner Ziffer, you may want to offer any of your own context of this, but just so that we know, this does, in effect, also reject the small portion of the grant, which doesn't, frankly, could not get us the way we needed to go on the road to sort of restoration and bringing that building to where we wanted it. So acknowledge that we are doing that also in this item. Commissioner Ziffer.
And if I can, it's got to be, it's over 10 years, I know, when the city commission first, as prior to me getting here, gave funds to basically secure the building because it was in pretty bad shape. Mayor, you were here at the time. And the purpose back then was to secure the building so that potentially a private, that would be used in some public way would take over the building. So we've just gotten through the recession and we're back at a point where we really were way back then. So I'm supportive of this and I'm looking forward to see what kind of response we get.
Right. Judy, just out of curiosity, has there been any interest at all from the private sector on this?
Yes, Mayor, actually there has been several interested parties.
Okay, great. Commissioners, there is a motion and a second on this item. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously.
Mayor, could you let us know who made the motion and second? I didn't catch it. I want to be sure we have it for the record.
Sure. Commissioner Ziffer, Commissioner Miller.
Doesn't matter.
Seconded.
Thank you.
Vice versa, whatever.
Commissioners, and I'll just say on this item, I think one of the things that makes it, in my opinion, a little unique for sale from the government is that it's kind of on the exterior of the park where we put a bunch of public money into. I think if this were probably internal to the park, it might be a different consideration, certainly for me. But I think given its position, and Commissioner Ziffer, your history is correct, our intention was to stabilize it so we didn't lose the asset.
Yep.
And now obviously we have the ability to put it in private hands. Item 13.03, City Manager.
Thank you, sir. Since 2005, the city has permitted advertising on Star Metro buses. In addition to commercial ads, the city uses the buses to promote specific initiatives, celebrations, and other campaigns. Examples of this include the Purple Heart and the Tallahassee bus boycott buses. This item before you is to update you on an opportunity to partner with the Florida Department of Transportation to promote pedestrian and bicycle awareness and safety through the Alert Today, Alive Tomorrow campaign. This campaign will involve wrapping up to 20 Star Metro buses with this important message and will provide additional advertising revenue to the city. Angela Bowen is available to provide you an update.
I'm going to move the item, Mr. Mayor, with a comment.
Sure. There's a motion?
Second.
And a second. Commissioner Ziffer.
This is just such a great opportunity for us, for not only do we get to put a great public service message out there, remind people, you know, literally at the point of sale, but where they're going to be by our buses, to beware of bicycles and pedestrians, and we're going to receive a grant from FDOT to pay for it. I don't think we can do any better than that. So I want to thank our friends over at FDOT for recognizing and reaching out to the city to not only put this message out there, but also support it financially. So thank you, and good job, staff.
Absolutely. Commissioners, there's a motion and a second on the item. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Item 13.06, City Manager.
Item 13.06 continues the, I think bearing the fruits of the mayor and others working with FDOT. It's an informational item, and as the technology has improved for signalized intersections, there are opportunities to enhance the safety and mobility for our community. Last year, we upgraded the traffic signal controllers, which now allows us to implement a safety upgrade known as flashing yellow arrow. we wanted to take this opportunity to share this important safety improvement with the City Commission. Josh Hollingsworth, with our engineering department, is available to provide you an update. What this really deals with is we've all stopped at these turn signals that are always red.
Yes,
take a
Lord.
long time to turn green. Well, the new technology allows those to be yellow, and you'll be able to turn if the traffic permits. So, Josh?
Okay. Let me grab this presentation real quick. Well, Commissioners, thank you for letting me have the time to talk about this. It is exciting to be able to talk about. My hope tonight is just to give a brief overview of what the flashing yellow arrow is, why it's becoming more prevalent, and what some of the benefits are. And if we have some time, just to take you through a quick example of what that may look like as far as the sequencing is concerned. So as you can see, it's simply a flashing yellow arrow, as the name would suggest. The intent is that drivers are able to more clearly understand that when facing a flashing yellow arrow, they may make the movement that is indicated by the arrow, but they need to yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk, as well as oncoming traffic who may be facing a green ball indication. At times, you'll see the sign indicating there that says left turn yield on flashing yellow arrow. Other times, you may not see that indicated. As far as my thoughts is that the left turn yield sign is a good thing, especially in the early stages of this indication. As far as the why, the indication here you see is somewhere familiar with, we call it the 5-section head. There's 5 indications on this head. It's usually positioned between a turn lane and a through lane to control both movements. As you can see on the left, there is a green arrow which indicates to the driver that they are protected from oncoming vehicles and pedestrians, so they can make the movement unimpeded. As you see on the right, the indication is a green ball, which is, if you're in the through lane, means you may proceed forward. But if you're in the left turn lane, you need to be exercising caution and yielding to pedestrians and oncoming traffic. The flashing yellow arrow is developed primarily to provide drivers with a clear message on what they should be doing, how they should proceed through the intersection. There's 3 modes of operation that you typically will find. The one on the left is the permissive only. It's just the green ball. You can make the movement by yielding. The middle one is what I just mentioned, the protected permissive, and then the third one is a protected only turn, in which case you can't make the movement permissively. It's only in the green arrow that you have the ability to make that movement. The flashing yellow arrow is capable of operating in all 3 of those modes. It can vary by time of day. There's a lot of different evaluation that needs to go into when and where and how to apply that in a way that's going to provide the safety that it affords, as well as the efficiency that we may be able to gain from it. So I'm going to take you through a quick sequence. The bottom of the slide shows what you would be facing as a driver. The top shows what the oncoming traffic would be facing indication-wise. So the first part is pretty normal. Left turners are protected from oncoming vehicles as well as pedestrians in the crosswalk. And left turners should prepare to stop, the solid yellow. And there'll be a short clearance interval where left turners must stop and wait to give time for the through traffic to begin moving. Following that, the flashing yellow arrow could come up to indicate the drivers they can proceed with caution after yielding to oncoming pedestrians or oncoming vehicles and pedestrians in the crosswalk. And then it would follow the standard sequence of a solid yellow arrow and a solid red with same indications. If you've driven too far from Tallahassee, not too far, you've already probably encountered these. Panama City, I know, has them. Down in Wakulla County, Valdosta, I think Gainesville, Lake City may even have some. They're beginning to become more prevalent throughout the state and the country. And primarily because of the safety benefits that they afford. I came across a study recently that was done in North Carolina. They examined about 222 intersections and found that by simply changing the indication from a protected permissive green ball indication to a flashing yellow arrow, they saw some decreases in left turn related crashes on the order of 15 to 20% just by changing the indication. The operation is the same, it's just a different indication to drivers. So I put this location on here to highlight one more benefit that the flashing yellow arrow can provide, and that's in pedestrian safety. This is Magnolia, Miccosukee, right there by the hospital. We're going to focus in on the westbound approach. So if you're on Miccosukee heading into town, making the left turn to head south is the approach we're talking about, and that crosswalk that you may cross if you're making that movement. So here's a picture of the approach. You can see the crosswalk on the left. And existing today, what you may find is that left-turning vehicles are facing a green ball indication on both directions, and pedestrians have a walk symbol. This is dependent on the drivers in that left turn lane to be looking for pedestrians in the crosswalk as well as oncoming traffic when they make that movement to turn left. So as you can see, we have some conflicts there. Even today, there's a heavy school crossing. The crossing guards are out there in the morning, and if you talk to the crossing guard down there, you'll hear that there's often cases that vehicles are not paying attention. They're not looking for pedestrians in the crosswalk, and that's a real safety concern for the pedestrians that are using that. One option is to just simply show the flashing yellow arrow, which gives the driver a heads up, which would be kind of the standard operation of a flashing yellow arrow. Another option would be that we have the ability now to basically prevent that turn from happening while the crosswalk is being serviced. Now, once the crosswalk is done servicing, if there still is time remaining, we can go back to a flashing yellow arrow, allowing drivers to make that turn permissively, and we know that we've given our pedestrians safety while doing that, making the crossing. So to quick recap, primarily the benefit of the flashing yellow arrow is in the safety. It helps to eliminate that I had a green light, which may be true. It may have been a green ball, but that doesn't mean you had a green arrow. And so oftentimes drivers may be not paying attention and confused by that. And so the flashing yellow arrow helps to kind of clear that up. There's something else known as the yellow trap. I didn't cover too much in that. It's a sequence that can occur in traffic engineering that we try to avoid, and we do avoid by not running certain sequences. Essentially, the idea is that if you're making a left turn and you're facing a green ball and that ball changes to yellow, you may assume that the oncoming traffic also has a yellow ball and they're beginning to slow down, and you decide to sneak through the intersection and make that turn. That's not always the case in certain sequences. What could be happening is that oncoming traffic could still have a green ball indication, and you may misinterpret that and make a left turn. That's called the yellow trap, and we avoid that at all costs. So we make sure we set fail-safes in place to prevent that from happening, but it limits us. There are certain sequences that we can't run in order to provide that safety. And so the flashing yellow arrow prevents that or eliminates the yellow trap because it gives an indication to the driver of what the oncoming traffic is facing, in this case, a green ball. And then finally, there's the pedestrian safety that I just highlighted. In certain cases, when we have heavy pedestrian movements, we may want to consider something like that. On the operational efficiency side, there's 3 items that I listed there. There are some improved signal coordination possibilities because, as we mentioned, or as I mentioned, there's some sequences that we are currently not using to avoid the yellow trap. It would open that ability. There's also some reduced delay that could be realized during some of those low volume conditions when a turn might be safe, but at other times of the day when there's heavy traffic, we don't want folks making that movement, so there can be some reduced delay. And then finally, there's a flexibility. There are complex situations out there. You can't have a one-size-fits-all, so the ability to be able to have flexibility to apply certain technologies in certain cases to provide more safety is a real big benefit, and makes me excited as a traffic engineer to have some more tools in my toolbox.
This is exciting stuff. I can
It is.
see that.
I know at 5:30 at the end of a long day, but I could go on for hours. So please stop.
Oh, please don't. Please don't.
So with that, I'll open it for questions if anyone has anything I can help.
Commissioner Ziffer.
How do we roll this out?
So carefully.
And do this in like 30 seconds
30
or so,
seconds.
okay?
A public information campaign.
Okay.
And a case-by-case evaluation. This is not going to be something that can be done in a wholesale.
Great.
Each case is different. So,
I'm glad you asked that, Commissioner, because as we did the bite boxes and other things, I mean, my biggest concern was the pedestrian piece of it. Now, I take your data at your word, which is that it has the impact of reducing the conflict between vehicles, but we're doing culture shifts here. This will be the first time we've seen this kind of box in the city, and so it's going to require that we bring some people to speed. It's not, no pun intended, to slow, not speed, but that we bring them to date around how this whole thing works, how it operates, and so that it causes the least amount of, I think, harm to citizens. So we appreciate your enthusiasm and look forward to to the rollout of this product.
Certainly.
All right, Commissioners, I'm not sure. I believe this is a informational item. So we appreciate the.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Commissioners, we're now on item 13.07, and I'll turn it to the treasurer clerk.
I'll move acceptance.
Second.
Second.
Anything to add there?
No, sir.
Okay, commissioners, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. We're now into a public safety update. City manager for introduction.
Thank you, sir. During the public safety update of June 28th of this year, Chief DeLeo presented a status report of the progress on the Tallahassee Police Department strategic plan and the 2016 Uniform Crime Report data. At that time, staff also responded, reported the initiation of the Public Safety Collective, comprised of agency heads, chiefs, and representatives from the Tallahassee Police Department, the State Attorney's Office, Leon County Sheriff Department, Florida State University, Florida A&M University, Tallahassee Community College, Crime Stoppers, and Tallahassee Police Department, of course. Today's update focuses on the outcome of those meetings of the collective, and Assistant City Manager Cynthia Barber is here to provide a brief update. I believe they met yesterday
Yeah,
for the
we
second
had
time.
our second meeting yesterday. So the collective was successfully initiated. We held our second meeting yesterday, and it was established on the premise that working together with community organizations and in partnership with the citizens of this community, that law enforcement would have a greater opportunity to impact public safety and those negative trends in our community. We met and we've been strategizing, sharing successful approaches that each agency is utilizing, identifying additional opportunities for us to partner and work together, and I'll share a little bit of that with you in just a minute. We also talked about the need for us to work collectively to provide open and honest feedback to one another about what we see in our own agencies, what we see in the community, and how we can overcome some of the challenges that impact crime in the community. Yesterday during our meeting, we received word that U.S. Attorney Canova was interested in attending a meeting. He had heard about what we're doing and was impressed with the work we're doing and feels like there's perhaps maybe some resources available to assist with some of the initiatives. So it is our expectation that he may be present during our next meeting. During our first meeting, we decided what we wanted to do is not just sit around and talk about what we could do, but actually come up with some real workable solutions to some of the issues we're dealing with. So we initially identified two things, two major initiatives that we're working on together. One is the Neighborhood Leaders Public Safety Initiative, and then the other is called Tallahassee Top 10. So as it relates to the Neighborhood Leaders Initiative, this is still based on the premise that if we have strong, engaged neighborhoods, which we have proven in Tallahassee that we do in a lot of different ways. And so we thought we could apply the model that we've used related to our preparation for emergencies and storms, utilizing those same leaders, basically doing, we want to do all of the neighborhoods eventually, but starting with some target areas, basically providing some information, some training, and some tools to get them, number one, informed about the conditions in their own neighborhoods, what they as neighbors can do to improve upon the conditions in their neighborhoods. And then at the end of the process, what we're hoping to do is leave them with a call to action. So this isn't just a workshop where we provide information, but how can we help mobilize neighborhoods that will in turn help us address issues related to crime. All of the participating agencies, which City Manager Fernandez mentioned, will participate in those workshops. And so we came up with an initial list of the kinds of things that we think it would be important to include, and I want to share some of those things with you. One of them is the residential safety assessments, where we actually conduct assessments of individual residential homes as well as communities looking for those things that they can do in their neighborhoods to target harden their neighborhoods, kind of make them less vulnerable to crime. And it goes from landscaping, locking cars, where cars are parked, just noticing certain things in their neighborhood. So we'll provide some opportunity for that. And this is in conjunction. This isn't just TPD. This is everybody working together. Also, we have a very lofty goal. We'd like to see every community establish a neighborhood crime watch in their particular neighborhood. In the past, we've had meetings where TPD goes to a meeting and then the sheriff department goes to a meeting. So what we talked about is rather than doing that, let's pool our resources. Let's go to these meetings jointly. They get introduced to the deputy that works in their area as well as the PD officer that works in their area. That way, we're not duplicating efforts. We can partner and work together on introducing the information and supporting those neighborhoods. Then we also want to do a lot of youth engagement. As we know, youth are involved, and these days, early and earlier ages are involved in crime, and so we're doing a couple of things. One is we believe a multi-generational approach where the more established members of the community work closely with the youth in the neighborhood, and we came up with implementing a model that's used. It's a global model. It's called Do Something, and the International Do Something Initiative, and it's actually a way to engage youth either through online apps or even offline, involved in projects in their neighborhood. Some of the kinds of things they do, we often participate in litter pickups. You all have been there. You've done the walks through neighborhoods, and oftentimes we're the only ones walking, and we're not there every day. So one of the things we want to do is how do we incentivize the people who live there and they're there every day to get involved, not only when we come out for a special event, but to take ownership for these events. So if litter is an issue, you address it in your neighborhood, creating some sense of civic responsibility in young people to get them involved. And I think the use of technology will allow greater participation because young people aren't afraid of it. In fact, they embrace it. And you can use those platforms to engage them, I think, more readily. This is, we've done some research on it, and it's a very fun way. It's been described as a very fun way, a gateway to involve young people in making a difference in the neighborhoods and the communities that they live and improving the life for their neighbors. In a lot of neighborhoods, you find that some people know where you may have a neighbor who's more dependent, but most neighbors don't know that. So if there's an issue, there's an elderly person, getting young people to not maybe like adopt or assist these folks who may not be as mobile in addressing issues, whether it's broken windows, code issues. A lot of times they have the desire to do something, but not the ability to do it. So how can we bridge these two generations and get them involved and working together? The broken window syndrome, which I mentioned just a little bit ago, when we're out there, we get thanked for picking up litter. And I often remind them that they're also invited to help us. And that there are certain things about your neighborhood that can communicate that you are alert, you're involved, and there are certain activities not tolerated in your neighborhood. Then there are other things that suggest a lack of care. And maybe people don't understand how that contributes to crime. So the broken window syndrome is a way where we take an assessment, we meaning we teach and encourage neighbors to do it because we don't want to be the ones to actually go do it. We want them to take ownership for it, that they know where these homes exist in their neighborhoods. They know where any code issues are because these can be havens for crime. So how can they help us to eliminate those things and take greater ownership in their neighborhoods on a daily basis? So we'll be adding that. We talked about briefly about code enforcement and taking that initial assessment of what needs to be addressed in neighborhoods, figuring out who has the ability to get it done and then who doesn't have the ability, and there again, utilizing neighbors, including the young people, to get that addressed. Then a second initiative that we focused on was more related to this notion of disrupting the cycle of crime and just being a little bit more disruptive with chronic criminal behavior, mostly related to drug activity and violence. So we are still very much, as we indicated last week, 2 weeks ago, we're very much committed to community policing. It works. It is a long-term strategy. In the meantime, we believe there are some strategies that you can deploy, particularly for community nuisances that are constantly involved in the criminal cycle, in and out of jail or prison or what have you, from one crime to another. How do you identify these folks in the community, and that we as law enforcement, we all have, and I think we introduced this last time, we all have our debriefings and our meetings where we discuss the cases we're working and the people we're looking for, we need to make contact with. But this is a process where all of us will share information. We have a joint list that these are our
Cynthia,
most problem. I'm sorry.
Just curious, when you say all of us will share information, who's all of us?
All of those participating
The
in
agencies that are
the
there.
collective, so that's the
Got it.
sheriff, police, all
I
of that.
understand.
that
Yeah, I
group.
wasn't sure. Got it.
Yes, we'll participate and share information, and we think that's an important first step. Hopefully, it's just introducing it, knowing that we're working collectively, we're pooling our resources to really give heavy focus on the top 10. We're developing the criteria for that. We know that that's important to make sure that we are targeting the right cases. And this isn't an issue where we simply want to get them off the street. We want to give them an opportunity to make a change or an adjustment, or yes, we want to get you off the street, because we're spending a lot of community resources really addressing some of the same people over and over again.
Ms. Barbara, I just want to, on that, and I know you are soon wrapping up, but I want to mention how really important I think that coordination and the sharing of information and the joint collaborative strategy is, particularly for repeat offenders. Again, we talked at the last time during the update around the number of crimes, particularly property ones, that go unsolved.
Yes.
Who knows how many of these crimes are being repeatedly committed by folks that, because they're not getting caught,
right,
find it free will to stay in the space and continue to commit and repeatedly victimize folks through their abuse of the law. So just want to say that I think that I can't wait to hear how you all are operationalizing that.
Okay.
I mean, how is that being made real every day of the week? But I think that's half the battle, I think, is
and I'll be
sharing
wrapping up, and
information.
like you said, very briefly, but I would like to hit on that in a minute. We believe these two initiatives together are a good combination. It's a good first step because, number one, a lot of times we can't conclude a case or get to the end because we don't have enough information. There are people who have the information, they don't share it. So one of the things, that's one of the other topics for the meeting that I didn't cover, is how to appropriately and safely identify issues in a neighborhood. I went to a meeting for another purpose at Walker Ford on Saturday, and I had notes passed to me from people who now they're out of their neighborhoods, but they're saying, hey, we have a problem in our neighborhood. They're dealing drugs over here. The father knows it, the mother knows it, and we're being held hostage by these people. So we want to know how to help them know how to safely do that. So that in working together, one of the things we talked about is how to follow that report so people understand that there's a real value to providing tips. So you get the tip, we want to demonstrate that the tip is investigated. We want to identify that an arrest is made. So the state attorney attends these meetings. He's a member of the collective. So what he's working on is how to close the loops. So if we have a geographic area, and you'll be able to identify, not only we can identify where there are cases, now you can identify where there's an arrest and what's the consequence, a 15-year sentence, a 10-year sentence, whatever the case is. So how do we share more information so that people know, number one, that we're listening and we're doing something about it, but that their information does really matter. So we're working on that. And then in terms of collaborating, one of the things that we're doing, the police department and the representatives from TPD and the sheriff actually are working together to develop the criteria that will be utilized to identify the first top 10. And we're actually using a model that's used in TPD already as a part that our violent crime response team uses. And then it'll be looking at things like prior arrests, convictions, and then aggravating factors such as involvement in gun crimes and then validated gang members. And the idea is to identify them, make contact with them, offer referral for resources that can help them get out of that situation, and ultimately help them to understand that there's a consequence to continuing this behavior, and it will be a strong consequence for that. So that's one of the things we're trying to do. Is we expect that the first list will be available in early August. So we expect that list to be available in early August. And that's just the first step, and then you have to talk about at some point whether or not you publicize the information. Right now, it's just basically using for greater coordination on the intelligence. But at some point, I envision there's a process whereby our community knows that these people who have disrupted your neighborhoods are being held accountable. A few next steps, and I'm wrapping up in just a minute. We are working also, to your point, Mayor, on an intelligence sharing database, trying to figure out how do we do that on a real-time basis. We share information already, but not on a real-time basis with all of the partners in the room. So how do we do that? And so there's a team of representatives from the various agencies who are working to figure that out. The meeting will be held in the next week or so to finalize that. And that, we think that's another good first step. You can see, everybody can see real time what's happening. And then that gives them an opportunity to see how they can help. Then a couple of next steps. That was one. The other one is, and what I like best about this is the true collaboration that I'm seeing in the room. Florida State has something that they call the First 45, and there is some anecdotal information that on university campuses, the first 45 days or so that a student is on campus, particularly freshmen and people who are transitioning into this environment for the first time, there's the greatest opportunity for them to get off track. And that's academically, that's behaviorally, that's all different ways. So what they do is they have a very intenseful, engaged, proactive process where they're acclimating the students, warning them about involvement in crime, about being victimized and how to avoid that and how to make good, responsible decisions. So Chief Perry asked during the collective yesterday for us to, he'd like to have the collective involved in that process rather than just FSU. I think that's critically important because students spend a large % of their time, if not most of it, off campus. And when they're off campus, they have the opportunity or the chance of interacting with one of our agencies. So to the extent that we can develop a relationship that's proactive and supportive, I believe that's better than finding ourselves in a bad situation once we've established a relationship. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to do that as well. And then lastly, unrelated to the collective meeting that we're working on is the Uniform Crime Reporting Review, just trying to validate what we're capturing, how we're capturing, making sure it's consistent with what's being done across the country. We've had contact with FDLE and with the FBI regarding this matter, and we're waiting on a follow-up from them in terms of either their ability to conduct it themselves or a referral to a good third-party agency to help us. And I'm not sure that I shared that the initial identified community for the Neighborhood Leaders Initiative is Greater Frenchtown and Griffin Heights area and a perimeter of about 1 to 2 miles outside of that. And I think that's great because it's important, I think, to keep the universities involved, and having that perimeter includes student housing in that perimeter. So they'll be involved, and they're very excited about that because they too are concerned about trends that may impact their students and their families.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Barber, and to the chief and all those who have been participating up to this point. Very good report. Look forward to the next. Commissioners, we are going to be on recess for about 15 minutes.
accessory dwelling units, amending the definition of accessory dwelling unit contained in Section 1-2 of the Land Development Code, amending Section 10-280.7 concerning accessory dwelling units, and also amending Section 10-412 concerning accessory units. I understand that the recommendation for this, the staff recommendation for this item has changed from the initial agenda item. Staff now recommends that we take any testimony in public hearing, that we continue the public hearing to September 27th, where there will be additional public hearing, and then make a decision after that.
Great. Are there any speakers on the item?
We do have speakers. The first is Tom Clark. The second is Ramona Abernathy Pierce. If you'll approach the microphone to your left, my right, each speaker will have 3 minutes for his or her remarks, and if you would start with your name and address, I would appreciate it.
I'm Tom Clark. I live at 1515 Payne Street, Tallahassee. I represent Sustainable Tallahassee as the chair of the Transportation Committee, and Sustainable Tallahassee supports the concept of accessory dwelling units for the reasons stated by the city, which is to expand housing choices, including the opportunities for extended families to support each other while living close together. Sustainable Tallahassee also supports the concept of ADUs because they offer an attractive way to increase residential density. The advantages of increased density are numerous and include more residents traveling shorter distances to work, commercial, or social destinations. Shorter distances making it easier for residents to walk, bike, or take the bus to wherever they are going. And when driving a car, the shorter distances are beneficial for safety and for energy savings. So ADUs would also provide a small but meaningful increase in sustainable mobility in Tallahassee. The residential density that would come from ADUs has several important advantages. The change would be gradual. The overall increase in density would be modest and proportionate to what is already there. And the change is organic in the sense that it arises from the residents themselves. So with these points in mind, I hope the Commission is able to make ADUs easier for residents to build while accommodating the reasonable concerns of residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Ramona Abernathy Payne. She'll be followed by Adam Anthony Biblow.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank Commissioner Ziffer and Commissioner Richardson for being at the meeting Monday night discussing this issue. And thanks to Growth Management for being there after hours. I think continuing this is the right thing to do because the time frame that we had to look into the ordinance was very limited. There were a lot of questions. Monday night was the only meeting that was called on this. A lot of questions went unanswered. Neighbors have concerns about the language of the ordinance. No one at the meeting was opposed to the concept of ADUs. We supported the concept of ADUs. However, we feel like this ordinance has got some problems with the language. The changes have some problems that we'd like to address before actually going forward with it. Changing density without actually changing zoning is one of those problems. There was no mention of addressing parking issues, and if you're going to encourage commuting from these people, then you need to have a way for them to deal with the parking. So thank you for continuing it, and I look forward to having a chance to dig into the details and figure out what's going to work for everybody.
Could you give your name and address, please, for us? Thank you.
Ramona Abernathy Payne, 2006 East Indian Head Drive.
Thank you. And Adam Anthony Biblow.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for your time. I wanted to speak in support of the ordinance, and I'll be brief. I think everything that the first speaker, is Mr. Clark, right, said, I concur with. I would add to bullet points, so one other advantage is if you can expand the opportunity for more housing within the city, that reduces demand to sprawl in the countryside. So that's another point that's sometimes overlooked. Second point, the ordinance is good as drafted. It potentially can be improved by providing a requirement to meet and get feedback on how the design of any accessory dwelling unit that will be built could be built to universal design. You know, it's more accessible for people that may have physical challenges and elderly, and wouldn't require that the units be built that way, but just to discuss that with someone that can provide that guidance, and then might also be able to inform the owner as to the benefits of that. It's just a suggestion. If you have any questions.
Thank you,
Could you
Tony.
also give your name and address, please?
Sure. Adam Anthony Biblo, 1316 Lehigh Drive.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ziffer, followed by Commissioner Miller.
Because I've heard a lot about this, and I just want, no, just some comments. You're fine. Because nothing's ever perfect, and I'm glad we're continuing this so that more comments can come out, but I'm just going to briefly talk about a couple things. Parking, for example. There's concern that, you know, somebody builds an ADU, those folks that are going to be living or individual in the ADU will park on the street. Okay. So when I was a kid, there were 5 of us in 5 years, and guess what? My neighbors were thrilled when we could all drive, because all of a sudden, instead of 2 cars, there were a lot more than that, and you can't control that. The cost, you know, to build an ADU, you're looking at probably $100 a square foot. These aren't going to pop up everywhere. They're just not. There's a concern that there are going to be a lot going up so people can have renters in their backyard. I have an ADU in my backyard, and we bought the house because we were interested in having that so that as we get older, we can stay in our home and probably have someone live there that would help us as we get older. I don't want a renter in my backyard. I know that. And finally, I think some of the things that we ought to be talking about is, for example, if somebody wanted to be an ADU above a garage on the back property line, and in the multimodal, I think the back is, what, 10 feet maybe? All of a sudden, I'm going to have potentially behind me somebody building a 2-story with windows looking right down on my back. Those are things that I think we ought to talk about, which is, you know, windows on certain sides and things like that. So I'm glad we're going to flesh this out. I'm glad we're in more of a conversation, but the fear thing that some are putting out there, I don't think is relevant. I think what we have is an opportunity to provide some housing that, for example, in my situation, might solve a problem for me as we get older. They're not going to crop up everywhere. And I think everything that was said earlier, and Ramona, including your concerns, are all important, but I'm hopeful that in September we can bring this to closure.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Miller.
I think that Commissioner Ziffer covered it. I was interested in how often was this going to be used, and do we have any information on that kind of thing? So I'm good.
Thank you, Commissioner. If there are no other comments, Commissioners, we actually have to vote to continue this item to the September 27th.
Move to continue.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to continue to September 27th. All in favor?
Aye.
Let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously.
So to clarify, both the hearing is continued and decision on the merits continues to.
Correct. Correct. Thank you, City Attorney.
Item number.
Please.
Item number 15.02, ordinance number 17-0-24AA. It's an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending the Tallahassee Land Development Code to allow drive-through facilities as a permitted use on specific segments of roadways in the urban pedestrian -1 zoning district outside the multimodal transportation district if additional urban design criteria are met. It also amends section 10-284 to add additional requirements for drive-through facilities.
There are 2 speakers on this item, Mayor. The first is Michael Bannister, and then followed by Mike Brazine.
Michael Bannister, 1210 Benton Road. I'm representing the Benton Hills Neighborhood Association. We are opposed to the language change, allowance on the east side of Thomasville Road. I want to remind the commission, I probably don't need to, but Tallahassee has always prided itself, especially over the last 10 or so years, on its work to become a more walkable and bikeable community. This proposal flies in the face of those efforts, especially in the light of the recent fatality at Thomasville-Bradford intersection. This proposal makes the matter worse, not better. More is not always better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Mike Brazine, and he's the only other speaker on this item, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a quick way to put a drive in for pictures, or anybody?
Someone from the back will come.
I mean, I don't need the pictures essentially, but.
Someone's going to come and help you.
That's okay. You don't, I can. Great. Fire up the power. Very much. And then to advance it, what do I? Button. Okay. Yeah. Great. 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 Good evening, commissioners and mayor. I'm Michael Brazine. I'm the chairperson of the Benton Hills Neighborhood Association. And I'd just like to say I appreciate you taking the time for us tonight. I know you've had a long day, and we'll try to keep this nice and short. But I wanted to mention that, every day I get the opportunity to think about how lucky I am to live in a city like Tallahassee. It's beautiful, the city works, and that especially how lucky I am to live in a great neighborhood like Benton Hills. Benton Hills itself is going through a resurgence. People are coming alive to make Benton Hills an even more friendly, safe, and livable neighborhood. We have a historic high in our number of members this year. We have a very active Facebook page. As you can see here, we have more people at our, well, you can't see we have more people, but we have more people at our events. Oops, overjumped.
There you go.
And fortunately, as you just got a quick preview of, we have our own art in our park, thanks to the help of Commissioner Ziffer. And we appreciate that help in making our sculptures in McCord Park a real draw for our neighborhood. This proposal that you're looking at here today, while not catastrophic like four-laning Benton Road, is still significant. Like all in-town neighborhoods, we're getting our share of cuts as we deal with a growing city and urban infill. The ADU is a prime example. We had some people that really like it, some people that hated it, a lot of people kind of in the middle, but that division cuts at our neighborhood. We're trying to have a cohesive neighborhood where we can accomplish those goals of being more friendly, safer, and a more livable neighborhood. Neighbors are walking and biking to nearby stores. Many do it together or with their kids. As we make this road segment more unsafe and more difficult to maneuver, it makes it less likely that neighbors will make the trek, less likely that they'll get together for the walk. It's one more cut to our intent to make Benton a more friendly, safe, and livable neighborhood. In the 25 years that I've been associated with Benton Hills Neighborhood Association, I've heard all kinds of things come my way of what the neighbors would like. Less cut-through traffic, more sidewalks, more bikeways. But one thing that I've never heard anybody pull me aside for and say was, hey, Mike, we need another drive-through restaurant in Benton Hills. You know, it just hasn't happened. I've given it 25 years and it's never happened. So we need your help. Please help us keep our resurgence in Benton Hills moving forward. Don't give us another cut. Don't give us something that we don't need and we don't want. Thank you very much.
Could you also give your name and address, please?
I'm Mike Berzine, 1401 North Randolph Circle.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
No further speakers on this.
No other speakers, Commissioners. Commissioner Ziffer.
First of all, I want to make this comment, and I'm hopeful that Commission is in somewhat agreement. I think one of the big problems we have for safety along Thomasville Road is a few years ago we went from a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit to 45 miles an hour. And the reasons we won't go into, but it did happen. It was 35 all the way to almost, I guess, Armistead. And it went all of a sudden to 45 in an area that Whole Foods had just opened, and we had restaurants over on the west side. And that's an area where we have a lot of pedestrian traffic. So from my standpoint, the safest thing we could do is try to lower that speed limit. And I think that may be on the horizon. We'll see. And you're right, Mike. Nobody has said, I really could use a drive-through, but nobody says, I wish there was a sculpture garden there, things like that. And quite frankly, Thomasville Road, while it's part of Benton, it is part of a huge population that travels from our downtown up north. For me, I'm going to be supportive of this, and for the most part, I almost always come down on the side of neighborhoods, but I think in this particular case, I don't like the ADUs. I don't think we're going to all of a sudden see a huge expansion of drive-through there. So I'm going to move the item.
There's a motion and a second on the item. Other comments? Commissioner Miller.
Well, normally I would look at this and say this is on Thomasville Road. At some point, I respect the neighborhood, but at some point, where does the neighborhood end? But in this particular case, and I don't have a problem with the place on Tharp Street, but in this case, I'm just really concerned with how close a potential drive-through would be to the intersection itself. And I don't know how many of you drive it, but you go out and there's a lane that comes up in front of this property and then merges into the other two already, which creates a little bit of a snag around, it's kind of dicey around drive times. So I know we took the other side of the street out of the equation last time, and I thought that was a really good move. I'm really got cold feet about the one on this side. I am supportive of the one on Tharp Street. So how do we resolve that? I guess you guys can just
Staff, is
have
there a
an opinion.
recommendation that might meet, assuming that there was support for it, that might meet that request? Cherie?
As you did with at the previous public hearing, you can reduce the size. You always have the option to reduce the size of the amendment. If we're not expanding it, that would take additional advertisement, but since it's a retraction, that is an option that's possible.
So I'd like for you to consider a friendly amendment to remove that piece. Just an ask.
Yeah, I'm going to, at this
And
point,
it's
let's
all
see
right
where the vote goes.
Okay, right, it's fine.
All right, Commissioners, there is a motion and a second on the item. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no?
No.
I think it's 3-2, passes. Commissioners, we're now on item.
I don't think it did.
So, no.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I'm a no.
You were no. I'm sorry, then, Commissioner Miller, do you have a substitute motion?
Well, I'd substitute that we would approve the Tharp Street expansion with the drive-throughs.
Second.
Only.
There's a motion and a second to approve with the Tharp Street, so not an expansion but a retraction of the district. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioners, we're now on item 15.03, City Attorney.
Item number 15.03 is ordinance number 17-0-30AA. It's the second and final public hearing. The title of the ordinance is an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending Chapter 10 zoning of the Tallahassee Land Development Code, adding mortuaries in the Central Urban-26 zoning district if additional locational standards are met.
No
Move
speakers.
acceptance.
There's a motion and a second. There are no speakers. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. We're now on the final public hearing for the evening, item 15.04. City Attorney.
Item 15.04 is ordinance number 17-Z-25. It is the second and final public hearing on this proposed ordinance. It's titled, An Ordinance of the City of Tallahassee Designating and Including Additional Territory as and in Office Residential 2, and General Commercial, that is C-2, on the official zoning map of the city of Tallahassee.
Richard DeRobbie here is here if you have questions, otherwise no speakers.
Move acceptance.
Move option 1.
Second.
There's a motion and a second, staff recommendation. All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioners, we're now at the point of the meeting of unagended speakers. Treasurer Clerk, are there any speakers?
Yes, Mayor, we have 3 speakers. The first is Erwin Jackson, then Harry Brown.
I need some technical assistance. Can we get this paper showing?
He's coming.
Thank you very much. There's so many dots, I forgot where the dot's supposed to go. That's good. Yep. You got it all? My name is Erwin Jackson, 1341 Jackson Bluff. What I'm holding here is a poster that I brought to the City Commission 7 years ago when I was discussing corruption and self-dealing by ex-Mayor John Marks and City Commissioner Scott Maddox. How to make millions as a mayor of Tallahassee, land deals, lobbying, loopholes, and looking the other way. Now, Scott and John were certainly involved in self-dealing, but each member on this commission were guilty because you looked the other way. Back then, and it continues today. Scott attempted to ridicule me by saying Jackson's just a City Hall critic. Don't believe him. No one listens to him anyway. Tallahassee Democrat was all too quick to provide cover for you, Scott, and for this commission. Well, Scott, you were proven wrong again. A number of individuals are listening to me. Matter of fact, last week, the FBI called and wanted to thank me for information that I had provided them several months ago. I talked to them a lot for almost 2 hours on the phone, and they listened very intently. Actually, Scott, you'll be glad to know that you were the focal point of our entire discussion. Furthermore, I learned that the FBI has been monitoring City Commission meetings for over 3 years, and they always look forward to my presentation. I was pleased to hear. Several months ago, I sued Scott over a residency issue. The interesting part of that is the lawsuit allowed me to get him under oath. Under oath, I was surprised at what he said. To me, he admitted to not only engaging in bank fraud, but income tax evasion. Now, it's going to be hard to see, but the graph we have up there in the top shows why is Scott transferring assets to Paige Carter Smith. Governance Incorporated, an office building, his personal residence, and a personal residence with a short sale by BB&T that raises other issues. Those assets have all been transferred down to Paige. In the transfer of these assets, he sold them for Paige for almost $470,000 less than he paid for them. Now, can someone explain that to me? Combined real estate currently being held by Governance Services Incorporated is $4.3 million. Now, this lady is either one of the best real estate folks I've ever met in my life, or she's an active participant in the scam that Scott Maddox is running against all of us. Now, what are the benefits for Scott? Scott gets a questionable tax loss of $760,000. Paige immediately turns around and allows him free rent for $1.4 million. And then, how can Scott regain this property? By a simple buy-sale agreement or a marriage proposal.
Your time has expired.
One of the two. I've
Sir,
got
your
several.
Pardon? Your time has expired.
Okay.
Thank
Just
you
in
very much.
summary, there's several tax questions that have to be answered. Did Scott pay income taxes of $1.4 million? Did Paige pay a gift tax?
I'm sorry, your time has expired.
That's fine. And so there's a lot of
Thank you, sir.
issues that was important to point
Next
out.
speaker.
I certainly appreciate
Next
your time.
speaker is Harry Brown.
Harry.
This is my Bible.
Yes, sir.
I'm here to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Hello, I'm Harry Brown, and I reside at 5431 Crump Road, Tallahassee. I'm back to remind Mr. Fernandez how he promised me that he was going to return my phone call, but refused to do so. I called his office and spoke with his secretary, and she promised me she would tell him that I was still trying to speak with him. I tried at least 10 times, all to no avail. Each time I called, I spoke with different receptionists, both male and female. 2 commission meetings ago, I asked Rick why had he not called me back. He lied, stating that he had called me back. He knew full well he was lying. At the time, at the last commission meeting, he told me that he was not going to call me back. Over the years, Rick and I played softball together while working here with the city, and I showed him nothing but the utmost respect as I served him well at the city hall. Yet he did not have the courtesy or respect to return a simple phone call. As I worked here with him, he camped out in my work area, polluting it with cancer sticks, while we had some very poignant conversations discussing matters regarding the city. But now that he's sitting at such lofty perch, he has no respect for common folk. I had the same disrespect shown by Curtis Richardson. He will not return a phone call either. I knew he was a misfit for the commission when he arrived on the commission and started giving out kudos to Anita Favors. He even warmed before he even warmed his seat. I beg each citizen of the city to vote with your mind and not your heart during the upcoming election, so we can pull ourselves out of the quagmire that we are in right now. This city is in a mess with the current commissioners. Elect a body that will work together for the betterment of the people and not for the betterment of themselves. Listen to me, betterment for the people and not for yourselves. Let us pick real leaders and not leaders of the system. You know, I've noticed over the years, our furry friends get more kudos than this commission. You just watch it. I've seen it over the years. Our city seems like going to the dogs. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Adam Anthony Biblow. And that is the last person for whom I have a speaker for.
Good evening once again, and thank you again for your time. I want to talk about 2 issues, and I'll try to be brief. 2 areas where I've been working with your staff over the last few years. Haven't quite seen the outcomes I would have anticipated. One is for the neighborhood, actually the entire city. My neighborhood is interested in traffic calming, and the range of traffic calming strategies that the city currently has available to respond to those kind of issues is limited to one, which is speed humps. They work in many instances pretty well. I have some neighbors that don't like them, and from someone that used to be on your staff and served in that area, I know there's a range of options. You know, some local governments provide 30 or more, and I know your staff is capable of that. I know your staff. We talked about broadening that palette of options for traffic calming strategies. Somehow and it seemed to get support from staff, at least, mid-level staff, shall we say. Never got any further, so I would like to ask you to see if you would be so kind as to pursue that matter further. It doesn't bind your hands and make you use any particular traffic calming strategy or any traffic calming strategy at all in any instance. It just opens the range of options that you can use. And so I wanted to talk about that. And of course, in Indian Head, we'd love for you to explore those options to begin with. We have a couple streets that have passed the criteria of the required percentage of property owner signatures. But we're waiting to see if we can get a broader palette of strategies. And the other thing, I work downtown, sort of diagonal across the Capitol from where City Hall is. Often walk by here at lunch. I'm just on the other side, which is Madison and Gaines and Monroe, that area where they already tore up part of the Capitol. Your staff has been helpful, as FDOT in the past, on some pedestrian issues. I know I've had, I think, Commissioner Miller out there before, and I've had staff out there. And staff has been very generous with their time at looking at some issues. And I'll give you some examples, but I won't bog you down time-wise with detail, but like traffic signal operational issues, some design issues, etc. That said, the ball was dropped, so to speak, and there's never been any follow-through in terms of responding. And if you need any specific examples, I can give you an example of what I mean by that. But again, I would ask you just to see if we can somehow cajole some kind of follow-up and further looking at that issue. And that,
Excuse me, that's your 3 minutes.
Sure. That area is nothing special per se. It's the entire downtown would benefit, and you may want to consider a walk audit where professionals come in or your own staff examines some of the issues.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tony. I think that's a great idea on traffic calming, by the way.
Commissioner Miller.
I want to, first of all, thank you for bringing this up again. And he has brought it to me before, but with all the stuff, I just didn't ever get to the point where I could take the ball and run with it. I want to talk about the downtown safety issue first of all, because I did take that to staff, and their comeback was basically, this is a state and federal highway, so what can we do? But since you're here, we can ask them to look into that and get us all apprised. In the context of the fact that we should be searching for a way to get people from the Capitol to Cascades Park. And this is something that I've talked about in years past, literally, because we have the biggest tourist attraction in the city is right across the street, and Cascades Park is a wonderful place to visit. But if somebody's my whole wayfinding thing has always been about the fact that I wanted people to be just unconsciously led around the city, that they could immediately see, well, it looks like it'd be good to go here, or this looks interesting, or that goes interesting. And that would include making that way across the street in the very block that Mr. Biblo is referencing. How do we get folks to easily cross? So if you could look into that, I'd appreciate it. As far as traffic calming, I would like to make the request that we look into expanding our options. I know there are a number of them, and I agree completely that we should be trying new ideas. We've got, I think since this first came up, we have new management in place, and we have new organizational structure as far as public works / public infrastructure, and a little bit different approach. So if it would be possible for you to bring us back an agenda item where we could actually discuss this in a little more depth, I'd appreciate that.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Ziffer.
Commissioner Miller and Anthony, thank you. I've learned a little bit about this lately, being on this Bicycle and Pedestrian Council. I'm going to give you a number that might be helpful to you, and what I'm referring to is filling in gaps. And one of the gaps we have, for example, is Monroe Street. Not only down, because we've talked about it, there's a gap because there's a barrier that exists psychologically down on Monroe Street between the east side and the west side. We recently filled a gap on Monroe where we built the overpass, the walkway, where I think, I'm probably going to get the number wrong, staff, whoever was here, I think it's 85,000 crossings in less than 6 months. Now, I would venture to guess we never even came close to that many people crossing Monroe Street over a 6-month period ever, or even close to that, because we created not only a visually attractive but also a safe passageway. So these are things filling in these gaps that we need to look at. The issue is, like everything else, it comes down to money. So I know our staff has been working on trying to fill these gaps and all. You know, you think about Franklin Boulevard was a gap between Tennessee Street and the Parkway. And we have a lot of these others that we have done. These are ones we need to consider more of, and I know our staff is working on them. I think now you've brought that to our attention to even consider on a greater level, and I'm sure our staff will do so. And I totally agreement on the traffic calming.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioners, on that. Thank you again, Tony. Commissioners, I believe there are no other speakers. We're now at the point of sharing of ideas. Any ideas to be shared? Commissioner Miller.
Well, I wanted to just highlight the new hazmat vehicle that we have out there. This was the result of the city's legislative advocacy a couple years ago, and now we have a brand new state-of-the-art hazardous materials response equipment, including the tractor-trailer truck. But this is going to replace a 1996 model. That's 21 years old. So we have literally moved into the 21st century with this grant award, and I'm really appreciative of everybody that made that possible, and also the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, because they're the ones that provided the grant. The extra good news is that this isn't just a local response. This is 13 counties that are going to benefit from this upgrade. So, because this truck services 13 counties as part of a regional response team, so everybody is going to win throughout 13 counties. It's a beautiful piece of equipment, and if anybody has a chance to see it, then I hope they take that opportunity.
Great. Commissioners, the city attorney needs to handle one issue with us, and then we'll return.
Very, very briefly, as you know, the past session of the legislature adopted comprehensive legislation dealing with Uber, Lyfts, and other TNCs. As of July 1, we are totally preempted except one area, airports, of having any local ordinance apply to these folks. When we were discussing 2 years ago, a change in our vehicle for our ordinance to bring Uber into the fold, along with taxis and other transportation companies, a basic theme that I heard throughout that discussion from you was we need to have a level playing field. Now we don't have a level playing field. All of the fees that we have in our ordinance that we charged Uber and taxis alike are no longer applicable to the taxis. I'm in the process of working on a revision to that, and specifically working with the taxis and transportation companies, those representatives, to amend our ordinance in light of the state legislation. What I would ask you permission to do is to allow the collection of fees that currently is applying only to taxis and transportation company and not Uber any longer, to suspend those collection of fees until we have a ordinance, amended ordinance, wherein you can decide what, if any, fees you want to charge the taxis and the other companies. The amount of money that we would be deferring would be less than $12,000, and we could always make any subsequent legislation retroactive to July 1, so in fact we would lose no revenue from that.
Great. You need a motion, City Attorney?
Move the option.
There's a motion.
Second.
And a second, consistent with the request of the City Attorney. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, City Attorney. Commissioner Maddox.
Recently, we had July 4th, and you had the celebrations of July 4th. And it seemed to me maybe this year was different, or maybe I just paid attention to it this year. The fireworks started about July 1st and went to about July 9th.
And they ranged anywhere from right after darkness to about 1 in the morning. And I have a rescue dog that does not know that he is a fierce pit bull and is deathly afraid of loud noises and thunder. And he was just a shaken mess. A friend of mine that lives on North Ride posted on Facebook, their dog ran off during fireworks. They were trying to find the dog. Turns out the dog got hit by a car and killed. Our veterans with PTSD also have difficulty with loud noises. So sometime between now and next year, I'd like for us to look at a public information campaign that perhaps we can do through our outlets to tell people, listen, we don't want to keep you from using fireworks on the 4th of July. Let's limit it to the 4th of July, and let's limit it to the following hours on the 4th of July. And then everybody knows, and they can make arrangements, and they can secure their animals, and they can do all those different things. If you're a veteran and loud noises bother you, you can, go inside and know when it's going to come. But it's starting to get out of control with the length of time. So I'm hoping that sometime between now and next year, the commission can look at that.
Got it. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Richardson.
Added to that, I mentioned to Commissioner Maddox that a friend of mine called also and wondered about what we do at the animal shelter, the city's animal shelter, during the fireworks display at Tom Brown Park, since they're certainly in close proximity, and I didn't have an answer, actually. So maybe that's something that we can take a look at as well, Mr. Manager.
Any other sharing of ideas? Seeing none,
Happy birthday.
thank you very much. Thank you very much, and happy trails, because we're off for the remainder of the summer. I have been around here long enough to know that none of us actually take real off, but I do hope that you all figure a way, not just you all, but the city staff, figure out a way to have a little bit of a good time with their family and friends. We're in adjournment.
Any more meetings today?
I think this is it. I got to go home and meet.
Is this it? We have a 9 o'clock meeting. I think Gail's got a meeting.
I got a date at home.
Got a meeting tomorrow.
I've incurred the wrath.